In this lecture, I want to look at the Arkin Tonkens debate. This one now is regarding, should we let, like lethal robots be autonomous on the battlefield? In other words, should we, or is it ethical? Is it wise? Is it a good idea to have basically machines on the battlefield that can carry out and kill, and there's no humans involved, right? So independent, autonomous, lethal robotic warfare, and he wants to make the case for it. The Arkin, that is, he makes the case for it, and Tonkens will say, wait a second, this may not be a good idea. So let's look at Arkin. Arkin is a well-known roboticist, and he's got several works, and basically he does push this line that that yes, it's coming, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. As a matter of fact, it's an okay thing. In the end, it could provide us with warfare that is more humane in the end, because you're taking humans out of the situation, and so there would be fewer humans killed. And so a number of good things. It doesn't make war in itself good. It just makes it better than if humans are involved, as traditionally, of course, humans have been. So what's his case? He says something like this. Look, and this is an important point. This is sort of a theme that really, shall we say, pardon the pun, but it is the software that runs in the background of what I can see in Arkin's case here in this paper, and I suspect a lot of his other works as well. But nonetheless, he says it quite explicitly, and that's nice. He states it up front. He says something like this: robots are already faster, stronger, smarter than us, and he does qualify the smarter, because what does smarter mean? It's pretty easy to think about faster, designing a robot to run faster than a human being. But what does it mean to say a robot's smarter than a human being? That's not. But he says smarter than us, that in chess. Now, you can debate this, right? Is this the right word? That just because a machine can beat a human being, because machines now, the greatest chess playing programs can beat the greatest humans, the grandmasters now. The computers have basically won that. Are they smarter? Are they really better than? Like, what do we mean when we say now that computer is actually smarter at chess than grandmaster? It may be that that smarter isn't the right term. Even if the computer can beat the grandmaster, it may not necessarily overlap with what we as human beings, because we're the ones who started the language. Is it right to apply it to a machine simply because the machine wins a game? Is it necessarily right to say it's smarter than? So this opens up some doors, but nonetheless, Arkin is pretty clear. He's like, yeah, they're smarter than us in chess. So when you think of this complex of predicates, speed, within restrictions, in intelligence, they're stronger than us, all this. When you think of this cluster of predicates that, shall we say, we have been bested in terms of by the machines, they're already better at all these things, then if you have if you build up this snowball of predicates where it's like they're better at this and better at that and better at this and better at that, then why not? It's not so hard to believe that they're going to be better at being ethical. They're going to be more ethical, right? They're bigger, they're stronger, they're faster, they're smarter. Well, then they're going to be ethical. Now, careful with that. I mean, that's a bit of one of those kind of snowball arguments where it just piles up on you, and then you just go, yeah, okay, and then you're pushed into a conclusion that may not really be something that follows. It might be a totally invalid argument, namely that maybe these predicates over here that build up, are they the same kind of predicate as being ethical, like being strong, being ethical? Those seem to be very different predicates. A cement block is very strong or something like that. You don't say it's ethical. So now that's a bit of a ridiculous kind of comparison, but nonetheless, it captures the idea that I'm trying to get across here, and that you're going to be careful about just simply piling up a number of predicates and then say, well, I can basically then just kind of move and add any new predicate I want. The snowball as it rolls down the hill is just going to be grabbing predicates like crazy. No, maybe not. Maybe these are all predicates that are different in kind. So this is this might be a completely invalid argument in that sense. So be on the lookout for that kind of move, which you could say Arkin is pulling here. But or you could just say no, it's on a continuity. You know, they're smarter than us in chess, and yeah, maybe it's not a perfect notion of smart or whatever, but it's getting there, and so we're on the way to them being better at making decisions than we are. So, anyways, it's my point at the, before I move on is this is not self-evident, right? This, you better be careful about this move. All right, so in order to, shall we say, buttress this sort of movement from this set of predicates to the more ethical type of predicate for machines, Arkin gives us a bunch of reasons, 6 of them, and I really shortened them here. You can look at the text; it's much lengthier, but basically he says something like, look, and of course, they're not going to be perfect. Okay, they're just going to be better than us, not perfect. So if you're looking for ethical perfection, you certainly don't get it with us. You're not going to get it with machines. So if that's what you're demanding is ethical perfection, you're not going to find that with machines or us. So put that one to the side. What we want is, Arkin says, is like, what will be ethically better? Is there an ethically better way to do it? Yeah, with machines, but not perfect. Okay, so there's our 6 reasons. So let's kind of go through them. So no fear, better sensors, no emotions. Well, those are kind of similar. I don't think these are watertight reasons in terms of their separability. I think they kind of bleed into each other a little bit. But nonetheless, we'll follow what he says. So there's no fear, better sensors, no emotions, no scenario fulfillment. Like filling out a plan or whatever. And faster, they're better at information integration. And if 6 reasons why the 6th reason why we should bring them in is that if they're working with us, we'll get fewer ethical violations. All right. So in other words, for number 1, the computers machines, they don't need to protect themselves, right? They're not going to get scared in that sense. They can be used in a self-sacrificing way, whereas we don't expect. It's pretty rare in the history of warfare where you're expecting soldiers to go into situations to get a job done and they die in the process. That's pretty rare. We might have really dangerous missions, but not straightforward in traditional warfare. Where you say, well, if you're successful or not, you're going to die in this. That's pretty rare, if ever. It's usually in terms of understood in terms of risk. But you can make it out, but it'll be extremely dangerous. But it's not a given that you won't make it. Well, computers and robots won't have that. You can send them into situations that, it's a given they'll be destroyed. And that's not unethical to send a robot to its own destruction. However, it could be eventually, if you really want to make the case that robots are fully autonomous agents and they're rational agents and they're making ethical decisions, you might get yourself to the point where you're involved in a bit of a conundrum there, because the agency of the robot might, or at least you might be able to start talking about, well, with all these predicates, yeah, and they're more ethical, well, then maybe they have a predicate of agency and they become objects of moral standing. So that could backfire in the sense of if you get all these predicates all built up and all that built up, well, now you've got a person at the end of it all. And so some of these reasons won't work. You've just basically duplicated a problem. So you'd say, well, if the robot is so sophisticated now, it may not be fearful, but you still aren't allowed to kill it. So kind of like in science fiction scenarios where people are debating whether or not it's murder if you were to actually destroy a machine because it's achieved an arguably high level of agency. This stuff just gets worse the more you think about it. But let's go back to Arkin. They don't need to protect themselves. So that's number 1. That they can be with better sensors, and these are technological points that they could be more ethical because they can assimilate information, they can see it, they can track it. They're just better at picking up information than we are. So that feeds into into sort of they're going to be smarter than us on the battlefield, and so maybe they'll be more ethical. Sure, and there's something to be said for that because this is sort of a very ancient Greek kind of understanding of ethics. It's very close to knowledge. So it's not surprising that if you can make the case that something that would have more data, and you're kind of sliding a little bit slippery with the terms here, but something that has more data would gonna have more knowledge, so it would be a more ethical type of system. It is a bit loose on the concepts, but you can see where this is going here, all part of that cluster of predicates that Arkin starts out with. Again, no emotions to cloud judgments. We get scared, we get excited, nervous, and all these kinds of things, and clouds are judgments. And maybe we make mistakes. Computers can make mistakes too, but they would not be as prone to making emotionally based errors in judgment. They wouldn't have scenario fulfillment. In other words, they wouldn't go beyond what they're programmed to do. They wouldn't have problems of cognitive dissonance or whatever, of like fitting all kinds of information in that doesn't necessarily fit that well in order to achieve a mission. They seem to be less prone to, we could say, kind of cognitive dissonance, where you just sort of shoehorn all information in and make decisions on faulty interpretations. They probably would be, Arkin think they just wouldn't be prone to that. And so they're not vulnerable to those kinds of ensuing patterns of behavior. They, again, a technical point, they can assimilate more information and faster. And then, of course, in the end, bringing them as part of the team, where they'd be still part of the team, but they might be autonomous in their area, sort of a kind of a federated approach to war, that humans would have their sovereign territory and robots could have their sovereign territory, but they're still part of a kind of structure that works together. That structure, that little federated human, robot federation, would be in the end more ethical than simply a human army. So a net benefit there. So that's why it's a good idea to bring them in. They could maybe raise the standards or lower the number of atrocities. Now, speaking of atrocities, another thing that is, shall we say, the software running in the back of this is Arkin's notion that human soldiers. It's war is a horrible thing, and human soldiers, they commit a lot of atrocities on the battlefield. And if we have a lot of technology that comes in that isn't autonomous, but it allows human beings to take a further stand away from the battlefield, that's going to create a problem of distancing. In other words, soldiers will be more distant from the battlefield, like a drone operator will view the battlefield more like a video game. And so the technology there is semi-autonomous, or not really autonomous. It's just an extension of the soldier's reach, but it also serves to remove the soldier from the situation, and you could actually get more destruction because of people being distanced from the battlefield. It might be better and less destructive to have the drones more autonomous than completely dependent on the drone operator's decisions. So in that sense, modern technology, if it's not autonomous, could lead to more atrocities on the battlefield. And so that would get worse. So that's the problem of not having enough autonomy, is that you'll make human beings even worse on the battlefield. And so, and so Arkin also goes into a number of reasons why he thinks that humans do commit these atrocities, and fear and all these other things, and prejudice and all these kinds of things that factor into human behavior. And he says, look, at the end of it all, robots just don't have that, or we can avoid that, right? Being part of the robotic system. And so in that sense, we've got a case from a couple of different angles here, for saying that, yeah, we should have ethically autonomous, lethal, but it's still lethal, robotic warfare.